And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bubba and the BatFlip, episode 76. Position previews are done. Season starts in just over a week. So we are going to review our heavy player shares. We still have a few drafts to go. I think Toby's got another main event, at least one more, maybe two. And he'll tell you about that shortly. But I know I have a few more drafts to go. But we're going to give you the basics of it. You should have an idea of who we like by now. But if not, we'll tell you some more. You can find me on Twitter at BDentric and my co-host, as always, on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. Toby, how we doing, my friend?
Bubba, we're doing pretty well. You know, we're in the thick of it. We are in the thick of draft season, and it feels pretty good. It's a little exhausting as well, I think. Yeah. But I've got my Phillies. I'm donning the Phillies cap today in honor of the patron saint of catchers, JT Realmuto.
What did he do in his first at bat back?
Here. He hit a home run.
Oh,
you know, it was brilliant. You know, I'm like on Twitter, and it's kind of fun, like that people associate me with him now, in their minds, at least some people. You know, like 5 or 6 people in the world, and so I was getting tagged after he hit the home run of like the MLB.com video, which was kind of fun. And then I think it was Tony DiVincenzo, who partners with Dave McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote back, and he was like not to like damper the mood at all, but he did hit it off of Tommy Malone, and I was like, oh, that does kind of, was it on an 83 mile per hour fastball?
So it was batting
on
practice.
An 83 mile per hour fastball. But yeah. So, but yeah, it was good to see him out on the field. Interested to see how that impacts his draft. You know, where he's going in drafts. He was going so late this week, but it's really hard to see him going in front of some of the hitters that are in front of him, right? I mean, that's the thing that I think is really interesting is heading into drafts. I thought catchers might fall because you really have to believe in the catcher, and also because in DCs maybe catchers have a little bit more value because you can't stream them in the same way. But you really have to believe to get there. And so now when you think about the decisions you're faced with early on in drafts, right? You go early pitching. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But because I know you wanted to touch on that. But there's just so many different needs you have early on that, you know, taking that catcher has to be a priority if you're going to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure because you have to be comfortable with your builds, even the pocket aces, which I've adapted that you've rubbed off on me, and it makes sense. I get it. I was happy I got Nola and Giolito for like the second time. I'm just over the moon with that kind of start. And I had some people going, yeah, it's great, but it's such an uncomfortable build. I said, yeah, it's not great, but you just have to be comfortable with what you're like approaching it with. And we'll hit on it in a minute with some of our shares, but it leads to the potential to get JT Realmuto and stuff like that. It's kind of how it all starts to fall together as you build. But it just comes back to what we preach over and over again is know the player pool, and you can kind of draft any way you want. And there's no one way to draft. We know some guys like to, Dave McDonald talks about he likes to get one of the big shortstops and at least one or two of the big outfielders early with like one arm. That's his strategy. Some guys are going for the full house right now. Like there's different ways to do it. So whatever works for you. I did think it was interesting. The last thing I will say on this is Vlad Sedler tweeted it out. Rasball, I believe it was Blair Williams. I apologize if I got that wrong. He came out with his top 100 starting pitchers over there today. And Vlad read the article, and he tweeted out, he said it was very interesting. I think it was in the last 17 years of the main event. No main event winner has drafted a starting pitcher in the first round, or maybe the overall winner, maybe the overall. Because I'm like, it can't be just a main event because you've won a main event. So like, I was reading on that doesn't make sense. I think
it's the overall. It's the overall. Crazy. Yeah, it is. It is really interesting. And I wonder why it is. I mean, is it a product of the fact that you need to hit that generally what gets you the most value is relying on those solid hitters and then being able to get the guy who makes the leap, you know, the Bieber,
like
not the Bieber from last year. Yeah, exactly. Like the Trevor Bauer or the Corbin Burns or the person like that. Right. But then that becomes a challenge because it's like, is there anybody who does that consistently? Right. Is there somebody who does that more than once every few years in order to be able to do that, on a consistent basis. So it's super interesting. But, and I think you need to, I think my strategy is a little bit different this year. I've mentioned it before. In my first main event draft, I did not go pocket aces. I was fortunate enough to get Cole at 3, and then I went a couple hitters before. I think I went 3 hitters before I took my next pitcher. And so you need to be, I think, you need to be able to look. You want to look at the player pool and figure it out. But then it's also like that happens. But in my main event where I finished 9th overall, in that main event, I did pocket aces, and I missed on my first hitter, which was Andrew Benintendi. So if I hit on Benintendi, it's a different story, right?
Yep.
Or, if I hit on Blake Snell, who was my 2nd round pick in that. So it's just, it's a small sample size that we're working with, but also obviously 100% of people have won it, taking a hitter in the first round. So what should happen in drafts from now on? Nobody should draft a pitcher in the first round. That is my dare to the main event fantasy baseball community out there. Nobody has ever won a main event taking a pitcher in the first round. So don't be that guy. Don't take the pitcher. It's a 0% chance you're going to win if you take a pitcher in the first round. That's my PSA.
Yeah, I thought of you immediately when I saw that tweet. I was like, that's interesting. Like it stood out because we talk about how much pitching goes up, especially in the main event, and there's a lot of well-respected guys that take pitching early. So it was like, So maybe this year, Toby, you change that. You're going to win the overall. See, there you go. You're going to change it and be like, hey, the first right here.
The back of Garrett Cole. Me and Garrett Cole, my first main event team.
That's a good back. That's a good back.
The sunset.
That's a good back because Garrett Cole, monster. Even Aaron Boone let us know that he thinks Cole can throw 200 innings. Thanks, Aaron. We didn't need your blessing, but I think we appreciate it. So,
yeah.
That's good to see. But let's talk shares, and I know we'll go down rabbit holes on that, so I'll stop us here. And we're going to go position by position, talk about a couple guys here and there. We're probably going to share some of them because it just kind of happens. We talk so much about stuff. I think it seems like I'm starting to draft a lot of guys you have, and all of a sudden, we're mentioning guys before the show. It's like, oh yeah, I got a lot of that guy too. And it's like, oh, okay, well, there we go. So,
bread minds think alike, Bubba.
Yes, exactly. And we also, I want to preface this now. We were joking because one of my most owned pitchers is Steven Brault. We're not going to talk about Steven Brault. That's because it was drafted in drafting holds, 50-round drafting holds, or best balls, where you guys aren't going to be doing that right now. So it's just, he's going to be on your waiver wire. He's even hurt right now, I think. So that's awesome. But stuff like that to keep in mind. So, Toby, start us off. I have him
on 12 of my 15 teams, Steven Brault.
Yeah, and so you have 15. I have a list of 11 teams. I have 9 best balls I did not manually put in here, but I have an idea of who I have heavily. So I'll just be kind of making it up a little bit as I go, but I'll go off of this list for the most part. So 11 drafts for me, 15 for Toby. Toby, who's your most owned catcher?
My most owned catcher. Now, this is actually kind of fascinating.
I'm not laughing. It's not JTR.
It's not JTR.
I know.
And I think people who have listened to the show would know that it's not JTR this year. Just because I think there's some really good value in some of the middle tier. I don't even know if it's a middle tier. I mean, it's the upper middle tier or something, whatever it is. But I actually have my most shares, and this is going to tell you my approach to catchers this year. And also, and I'll caveat this with, there's a lot of draft champions leagues, which I target catchers a little bit more heavy than I might in a different league. But number 1 is Sal Perez at 7.
Ooh, up 7 of 15. That's almost 50%. That's impressive.
Number 2, Yasmani Grandal.
Yeah.
7.
JTR is going to be very, very jealous of this.
Number 3, Wilson Contreras.
There's a trend, people. There's a trend
6.
here.
JT Realmuto is number 4. He might also be 6, honestly.
But number 1 in your heart, so that's all that matters.
5. JTR is 5. I have 5 shares of JTR. So it just shows you, they're all there, right? I have kind of a group of catchers that I really like, and I like to get at least one of those guys. And so that's kind of how it is. Those are my catchers. And, I think with each one of them, with Sal, the plate appearances are going to be so high. He plays almost every day. The power is going to be really nice. It's an improved lineup that he's in. Hits the ball in the air, makes plenty of contact. As long as you're not in OBP, the plate discipline or lack thereof, doesn't hurt you too badly. And he just made really nice contact. I mean, he barreled the ball up at career best rates last year, and obviously it's a small season, so there's likely regression coming, but I think it's going to be beautiful if he's healthy. And I think that's what you got to ask yourself. If this guy's healthy, is it going to be beautiful? And if it's going to be beautiful, if the guy's healthy and you don't control whether they're healthy or not, then do it. And it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Can't complain with any of those catchers. For me, out of my 11, JTR and Grandal are in 4 of each, and I know I have Grandal more in those best balls too. So he's most likely my highest shared individual for sure. I'm a big Grandal fan to begin with. Like you mentioned, the tiers, some of that's OBP based. He's amazing in that. So I love Grandal a lot in that. With the chance, it looks like he might actually DH for a little while to start out the year is pretty promising too. So while he continues to get healthy, so keep an eye on that. My other guys, though, if you want to go on the flip side, and a lot of it's best ball based, but I actually do have them in some of the 15-team leagues where I kind of get one early catcher and then wait. A lot of Elias Diaz and a lot of Stallings. Like those are guys we talked about on the show many times. Like if you're in a 2-catcher league, if you don't want to go 2 big guys early, it seems like I paired up like a Grandal or a JTR with a Stallings and a Diaz in almost every league, or I've gone Stalling Diaz together. That's just depending on how the draft flows. But you give me the starting catcher in Colorado, basically free in drafts, I'll sign me up for that. And Stallings, I like the powers, whatever. But for a catcher that late in the draft, he gets for a decent average. He's like he's 250-ish, 260 or something like that, which for catcher is pretty good. So that's where I've been kind of leaning at the catcher's position. It's either go get one big guy early or just wait for those guys late. So Diaz, Stallings quite a bit with some Grandal sprinkled on top.
And I think that is the approach that you should take. I think I would definitely be in favor of that. And I have 5 shares of Elias Diaz as well. Like him a lot. And I'm a little embarrassed to say this. I also have 5 shares of one other catcher. I might regret that decision. Those decisions.
Can I make a guess?
Yeah, you can. You're gonna nail it.
Gary Sanchez?
No.
Oh.
Dalton Varsho.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, when you started making
I
those,
think like 140, or in those early drafts.
That's probably like a December draft, a November draft where things looked great, and now here we are.
Oh man, that and Leody Taveras is going to be the death of many draft Champions League teams of mine.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about Leody. That's a stinger. That's a tough one.
I mean, he hasn't lost the job yet, but
it's not looking good.
Best case scenario is he's batting like 9th in that lineup right now.
So all that value we liked is gone. So lovely. Let's go to first base. Who is listeners better guess my top guy, but I'll let Toby go first. Who was your first base guys?
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I think I actually spread out the love a lot at first base. So my most owned first baseman is Yuli Guriel. He is, oftentimes, it's hard to get batting average late. And so going after Guriel late is something that I enjoy doing. And I believe in Yuli in the sense that I think last year was a down year. If you look at the skills, they were very similar. He actually maintained the lower ground ball rate, which was key to his power, I think. And again, he is a guy that benefits tremendously from the Crawford boxes. And so I don't necessarily think that if the ball is deadened this year, that it will take too much away from him there. And he makes a ton of contact. He's going to be batting down in that lineup, which is, it's left a little bit of a bitter taste there. Batting 7th, it looks like. But I think he's a really good guy late. I actually had an opportunity to snag him in the main this weekend, and I was just too obsessed with pitchers at the time. He went pretty late, well into pick 300, I think, and I didn't pull the trigger. But so that's one guy that I like. And then the last one, he's not a first base eligible yet. He's util right now, but Miggy is actually one of my most owned hitters.
I love that.
You know, it's yeah. So like as a last round pick, he's good. I do think it's a little hard to, in a non-draft champions, to go after him because I don't think he's going to play every single day, and then he's util only. And so I think he's going to be more of a mix and match. I think you're going to see him off and on the waiver wire a little bit, but I do really like what he was able to do last year. It was really good. So he could take that nice step. And if he does get first base eligibility, he could be really nice as well. So
I like Miggy, especially like daily moves leagues. I think at Barf he'd be great because OBP, he'd be phenomenal in that format, even with util only. But yeah, there's a lot to like. It's hard.
Barf isn't daily anymore, though. Remember?
That's right. That changed. I forgot. But that I hate that change. But that had to be a Dave McDonald thing. I'm going to blame him on that. Just because we went universal, but like we're going with the overall Glarf and the other ones. We have to make it all uniform. But yeah, I think Miggy's going to be good. I hope he plays every day, but he's got some potential. He hit the ball last year. For me, I'll start backwards. I got a lot of early Rowdy Tellez. I backed off a little bit, but I'm starting to get kind of excited again, which is scary. So we're going to see. I might grab another share or two of the last week. Because it's just, man,
the whole team's injured.
Exactly. I can like feel it in my loins that he's just gonna start pounding the baseball, and when everyone comes back, he's hitting too good. He's too good not to play. And Grichuk's free in drafts. Like, we don't need to go in that, but he's free in drafts with these injuries. Springer grade 2 oblique strain. That's nothing to joke about. So that's going to be interesting. But I mean,
Bubba, when you can feel it in your loins, you have
exactly.
To, you know,
like it's meant to be. Yeah. So Rowdy, I have some early shares of, but Christian Walker and Jesus Aguilar, I have 4 and 5 shares of each. I get them late, kind of as if I missed out on guys or a corner infield option. Big fans of them. Talked about them quite a bit. But my most rostered first baseman, and Art came into the chat and guessed it right away. And anybody should, yes. I've said it a few times now. I need to buy a Phillies hat because I rostered a lot of Phillies, and the main one is this man. Rhys Hoskins. Reese's Pieces is going to be very, very important to my season-long fantasy baseball situation. So between OBP leagues and non-OBP leagues, I still think he hits like 250 to 260 and hits all kinds of home runs and drives and runs. The offense is too good in Philly. I love everything about Rhys. People are just down on him. I guess they're still worried about the injury, but I'm not. Like they say he's healthy. He says he's healthy. I'm not going to let that worry me. Maybe I should, but I'm not. So Rhys is my guy. I have a ton of him. We'll see how that goes.
Little known fact about Rhys Hoskins is that Bubba and I competed against Rhys Hoskins at trivia for my brother's nonprofit organization, and I think we beat them.
We did, and it took a lot of energy for me not to get to the group chat and say, "Rhys, I love you." Like it really did. No, I'm just kidding.
You should have. You never know what'll happen.
I should have like, "Hey, Rhys." Not saying I like you a lot, but if you look at my shares, I like you a lot. So can we make this happen this year?
We should have made that our Zoom background, was our shares percentage on NFBC with Rhys Hoskins at the top right there. And Andrew Knapp. I have drafted quite a few shares of Andrew Knapp in my DCs as well. Always important to get JTR's backup, and a good guy too.
He was playing trivia, wasn't he? Knapp?
Yeah, he was playing too. Yeah, that's actually how Rhys Hoskins was a part of it.
Oh, okay, that's what it was.
My brother coached Andrew Knapp when he was at Cal.
Gotcha.
So that's how he's involved with the organization. Yeah.
Gotcha. Because Rhys is a Sacramento guy, or maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're right. I think
he is. I think he's from Sacramento or that area somewhere. Elk Grove, Citrus Heights, something like that.
Yeah, look that up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, everybody join the Rhys. I'm telling you, I should know this.
He went to Sac State. He played college at Sac State. He was born in Sacramento.
That's what I thought. I thought he was a Sacramento guy. Yeah.
High school. Who did he play? Oh, he played for Jesuit.
Oh, he went to private school. Oh, he went to private school. Man. That's right. One of those guys.
Man.
Yeah, remember those
Yolo
days.
County boys.
Yeah, you remember those days.
Boys. I mean, Davis, Woodland. I mean, our arch rivals are Jesuits. So
yeah, we made fun of Jesuit because they beat everybody up because they paid for their kids.
Yeah, They brought in all the kids from all over the Sacramento area.
I may be wrong, but I feel like J.P. Howell went to Jesuit, who was a major league pitcher with the Rays and stuff, and he was in the bullpen with like the Dodgers and everything. So I want to say during one of the playoffs, Woodland played Jesuit and Hal pitched against Pedroia. I want to say that's what took place, but could be wrong.
Yeah, he totally was.
Yeah,
he totally was.
I remember all the scouts were there watching him throw a bullpen, and I'm sitting there in high school going, "What in the world's going on over here?"
Yeah.
So, man, wild times, everybody. But back to our shares. Second base, Toby. Who do you have heavy shares? Because this is one of those positions. This can get spread out, I think, because it's kind of all over. But what do you have? You're smiling like you have a pretty heavy dose of someone.
I have a heavy dose. I have a heavy dose of someone, and the heavy dose is maybe headed to the injured list as well.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Today was quite a today was an up and down ride on the Starlin Castro Express.
No. Yeah.
I have a lot of Starlin Castro. I have a lot. Well, by far my most owned second baseman. I think I have him in 8 leagues or something like that. Just as a late batting average guy, who's going to be in a good lineup. The challenge with him, so he was second base. So earlier today, he played at third base today. They're giving him reps at third base because they don't believe in Kieboom, right? They're like, David Martinez even said Kieboom's working on his swing, something or other. And so I was like, my guy's going to get second, third eligibility, middle infield, corner infield. And then like 3 innings later, it's like he leaves the field with trainers after trying to extend from running from first to third. So remains to be seen what happens there. But he's my number 1 guy by a lot, more than twice as often as anybody else. And then I have a bunch of second basemen that are kind of scattered around there afterwards. Whit Merrifield is one of note. Obviously, a guy I drafted in my first main this weekend, who I obviously like a lot. A guy who batting average and stolen bases. If that's what you're looking for in a draft, if you've gone two starting pitchers or you're looking for those 2 categories, always a really solid option there. So those are my second base. Kind of a little bit of a bummer. I'm actually, had quite a few of my heavily owned draft champions guys are not looking great. Stephen Brault being one of them, we discussed earlier. So
that's going to sting. But I'm just glad he's like pitcher like 14 on the roster. That makes me feel better. But still, you kind of rely on that guy once in a while. So second base for me, it's spread out down below. One guy I'll give an honorable mention to that I snagged in a lot of best balls late for second base outfield eligibility is Adam Frazier, leading off for Pittsburgh. Snagged him in a lot of spots, just leadoff hitter, plays every day, multi-position. But my main man, another multi-position guy, but I know for a fact when I was drafting him, it was for second base. But he plays all over the place. Leading off for the Cardinals is Tommy Edmund. I have a ton of Tommy Edmund, and it doesn't feel great taking Tommy Edmund, but it's one of those, he's going to hit leadoff. He's going to play every day. The flexibility is awesome to have, especially in NFBC formats. And he's going to, steal you maybe 10 to 15 bags, maybe more. He's going to hit you 10-ish home runs. He's not going to crush you. He's going to be just kind of a steady Eddie. I don't see him jumping off the page anywhere, but he's going to kind of fill a little bit each column for you and not crush you. So it's not a sexy pick ever. Like, it really does not feel great when you have like big boppers over here, another pitcher over here. But when you look at your team and go, if I don't take Tommy Edmund now, it's going to get real murky real quick. Or do I roll the dice and hope Colton Wong or someone like falls? Because as the draft season went on, like Wongs and Castros and those guys, they started getting jumped all over the place. So it was not consistent where you were drafting. So I was like, taking Tommy Edmund, we're moving on. So lots of Tommy Edmund for me.
Yeah, and Edmund's a guy who I really liked early on in the year. And then I kind of faded away from him, which I think tends to happen. And it may just be a fear of like too much exposure or something like that. But yeah, I think what you mentioned is key. I have just as many shares of him as I have of, or maybe even more of Witt, I think. So yeah.
And I guess the other one, I won't go into it, but I know I have a good, like probably 4 or 5 total shares of my 20 teams of like Jose Altuve. That's a guy I've been gambling on around 9 or 10. So that be another one. Let's head to the hot corner. Third base. This is a fun one, and if you don't have to mention the one if you don't want to. You don't have to. I understand. But third base.
Doom and gloom. Yet again. Most owned third baseman, Evan Longoria of the San Francisco Giants. Longoria actually last year I had him on all my teams. He was sneaky good. The StatCast metrics were great from a batted ball quality perspective. The barrel rate was excellent. Hitting the ball hard on a consistent basis, underperformed those StatCast metrics, but still performed admirably. Plays every day. Really just like a plate appearance guy I was targeting in later rounds of draft champions, just to make sure that I could keep up in the plate appearance game if folks got injured. And in some instances, he was my either third baseman or my corner infielder, at least my first, the first one on my list. So that's a little bit of a bummer. The next one for me, actually, I wasn't thinking of him as one. I was thinking of him as a second baseman. Would probably be Tommy Edmund there. Mm-hmm. But the guy I was going to mention otherwise was Alex Bregman. I had kind of just like a smattering of him throughout, especially as he's fallen in drafts. I mean, he's gone pretty late in some of the drafts here. And some of this was pre-injury. He's starting to hit now, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But it's hard to see him going. It's one of these things where it's really hard to see players moving up because it seems like there are good people in front of them. Mm-hmm. But with Bregman, I mean, we've seen what he's been able to do before in the past. He's really good. He's going to be in the middle of that Astros lineup. So yeah, and I believe I believe last year was an injury fluke. Yeah. So I'm giving him a pass on that. And what we saw before that was an excellent player, a player that was going in whatever the third round, second round last year.
Yeah, there's so many guys, and he's one of them that I'm like, I'm mad I don't have a share of, because I'm with you. What we saw last year is not like the Astros and the Cubs are like two teams that people need to just put last year in the rear view. Like those two, there's so many guys on both those rosters that are going to be so much better this year, and they're all coming at discounts and drafts. It's wild. So yeah, Bregman I don't have any of, but my main guys, Moncada and Devers, I have about 4 or 5 shares of each. I'm a huge Moncada fan, but people started really buying into him, I think, in the COVID stuff because he started moving around. Devers comes back to our JTR conversation, comes back to the Pocket Aces conversation. If you're in a 15-team league and you're in the back end of your round 3 and 4, JTR and Devers are sitting there for you all the time. And it seemed like the way third base drops off, and I'm kind of thinking maybe I should have waited on some of that, but we're going to talk about a Rosarino later too. It's kind of like that's kind of the wheelhouse for that pick on what you want. So if you're not worried about stolen bases, Devers is a great pick there. You get JTR. So I have a lot of those two guys. Other than that, I have third base spread out all over the place. It's nothing too crazy. The only other one, it's mainly like best ball leagues, is Joey Wendell. I was grabbing super late, multi-position, plays a lot of third base, but it's mainly Devers and Moncada, and then just spread out all over the place for me. So
totally
nothing crazy. Shortstop though, I'm pretty honed in on shortstop. So what do you got there?
I'm actually spread out pretty good here. Marcus Simeon, I think, is my most the guy that I have the most of. Back in the day when you could get him around pick like 140, 150, those were the good old days of Marcus Simeon. But given the situation that he's fallen himself into, now maybe he's even going to be hitting leadoff. Maybe now the Blue Jays will move Vlad from like batting 8th to like batting, I don't know, in the middle of the lineup even, maybe now with all those injuries. No.
It wouldn't be a Bubba in the BatFlip without a Vlad
Without
jab.
a Vlad jab, yeah, which I'm going to look really bad about at the end of the year. I'll take it. So Simeon is great. He's in a great situation. Kind of a guy who contributes across the board. Maybe nothing fancy, but solid player all around. Really like him a lot. Maybe he could take a little bit of a step forward with the power, even given he's leaving Oakland Coliseum, and he's always had more home runs on the road. So that was my first guy. Second guy going later on. JP Crawford is a guy I've mentioned on the show many times before. But JP Crawford for me is, I think he's really good. With the thing that's difficult is a lot of the guys that I'm talking about, like I had hopes of certain things, like, health. With JP Crawford, it was that he'd be hitting at the top of that lineup. He's been hitting like sixth, I think, regularly in that lineup, which isn't awful. But, as the leadoff hitter for the Mariners, if he ends up in that position, I think he'll be really good on base skills. Got to take a step forward in the batted ball quality department, but I think that's his one real weakness. And a guy who could get you, 90 plus runs if he's hitting the top of the order for the Mariners. So he's a guy kind of late in the drafts as my middle infielder on my bench. I like getting him.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. For my later guys, Freddie Galvis, I have a ton of, and that's just super late. Going to start every day for Baltimore, which seems pretty nice to me. But my main two, I have changed my tune as the draft season's gone on. A lot of Javi Baez early. Javi Baez early. I was all in on Javi Baez early. Did not want to have all the Javi Baez though. That's a risky one. There's certain guys I'm willing to go all in on. Baez might not be one of them. So I changed my tune, and I started going a lot of Gleyber Torres. And I'm really, the more I've looked into Gleyber, I always say Gleyber. Who knows what? I've become much more of a fan. Like, I think the thing that with Baez that got my attention was the stolen base possibilities, but he might also not steal as much anymore. Where with Torres, he might get you 5 or so stolen bases, but legit 30 home run upside, if not more, and actually brings a decent batting average, not to mention hits in the middle of the Yankees lineup. Like, the more I started talking to myself, I'm like, why am I putting Baez over Torres, you dum-dum? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I think by the end of this, I'm going to have more Torres than Baez when I add it all up. But I have basically, when I said, it's pretty much down to two, like, it's pretty narrowed. It's one of those two is on almost every one of my rosters. You can pretty much count that in.
Yeah, those are two solid guys. And I mean, Gleyber hit 38 home runs like 2 years ago. So he definitely can hit those.
It's one of those deals, and he's going super late. The only guy that I don't have, I don't have a ton of the early guys like Stories and Turners, and then I'm usually getting pitching or Soto or someone. The guy that I'm bummed I don't have, but it's because I'm taking Baez or Torres, I don't have any Dansby Swanson, and that might sting because they've been hitting him like 5th in spring. Ideally, we want him at like 2nd. The 5th's intriguing if he still hits like 20-something home runs. He can still run there because he still has a couple guys behind him. He's like the pitchers behind him. 5th's interesting with him. He could actually drive in more runs than we expect. So Swanson can be a nice value.
I hadn't really thought about it. He's a guy who he makes that big jump, from ADP of 220 to 100. And those are the types of guys I try to steer clear of a little bit, but I think I don't have any of him either. Maybe that's
like after him, it like drops off so much. Like there's big time drop off.
Shortstop is like that. It's such a fascinating position this year because it's so deep, but it's gone so quickly.
Yeah, and that's why I have so much Torres and Baez, because it's like if I don't take these guys now, it just drops. And so I'm grabbing one. And that's kind of been the structure in my drafts. Let's go to the outfield. This is a fun one. There's some very, very fun names here. So what do you have for the outfield position?
So for outfield position, the guys I have on the most teams, number 1 is Ramon Loriano. I have quite a bit of Ramon Loriano. Again, he's one of these guys who in 2020 had the same, if not better skills than he had in 2019. And yet, he's dropped, 20, 30, 40 picks in ADP, and I think he could hit at the top of that lineup. He could not, but I think either way he ends up, he's a 2010 guy, and I think the batting average will play. I think his batting average was awful last year, but he's shown the ability to hit for a high average in his 2 previous larger sample seasons. And so he's a guy that I like a lot. Not a surprise to anybody who listens to the podcast. Another guy I have tons of shares of is Justin Upton.
I like that.
I remember, part of this podcast, I feel like it's a little sad because I think about how how it was in the back in the good old days of like November drafting, and December. Like I got Gleyber Torres at one point after pick 100.
Oh man!
Pick 100, Gleyber
That's
Torres.
Insane.
And then I also for Upton, I got Upton around pick 400 for a little while. That's why I have so many shares of him. Now he's like pick 285 or whatever, you know.
Wow.
But just you know, the way I tend to build teams, I'm a little light on power towards the back end of the rounds, and I'm grabbing him. You know, if I am light there, and he's obviously had a terrific spring, which has helped out. He had a really good closeout to 2020, so he's a guy that I like a lot. And then the last one, who I really like is who I have a bunch of shares of is Gregory Polanco, who again, you know, won't be a surprise to anybody, but I just think that Polanco, he's got kind of, you know, it's boom or bust. But the boom could be really good, you know, as we've said for however long. But the price is a little bit more appropriate at this point in time than it has been in the past. You know, you've had to kind of pay that in the past, and now you're getting a little bit of a free shot. So those are some of the guys that those are the three outfielders that I think those are the ones, at least what I tried to do was focus on the guys that are actually like relevant now, you know, because I could give you all the guys that I draft towards the back. I could give you a lot of Jason Bossler, you know, for the Giants at third base. But I thought I would make it a little bit more relevant for our wonderful listeners. So those are the three outfielders that are kind of in a draftable range that I find myself having the most shares of.
No, I like it. Polanco, I've slowly bought in on just for the price alone. Like you said, he's not costing you a fortune anymore. So if he struggles again, you just drop him. It doesn't kill you. But what he's done in spring training and listening to him talk about saying he's finally healthy and can actually focus on playing baseball for the first time in years says a lot to me. And it's just kind of showing on the field. So I'm intrigued there. For me, it's three guys. Mark Canha, ton of Mark Canha, between OBP and regular. If he's hitting second, he actually will steal some bases too, to surprise people. He could get you maybe 10 steals, which would be insane. But power, going to score a lot of runs at the top of that order. So I have a lot of Mark Canha.
Great in OBP too. I have him in every single OBP league I'm in.
So do I. Every single one of them. So I've reached.
Well, you don't have him in Barf.
Okay, Barf. I forgot. I have him in Tout and the other.
I got him in Barf.
Yeah, so you win that one. You win that one. Fair enough.
Fair
enough. No, it's fine. You win. Aaron Hicks, lots of Aaron Hicks. I was an Aaron Hicks believer for years now. I've been an Aaron Hicks believer, and I've enjoyed the pleasures and the pains. There's no doubt about that. But I don't care if he plays 110 games for his price tag, and he's going to hit third for those 110 games. Sign me up. It's like we talk about with pitchers and other position guys, where the replay guy, you get good 110 games, then go get someone off the bench for the other 50. That's a heck of a ball player. So I've taken a lot of Aaron Hicks as well. And then last but not least, these guys are tied, so I'll take the one I wanted to mention earlier, Randy Rosarino. And I was talking with Toby about this before the podcast. Rosarino was a guy that I did not want to draft at all in November. I wanted nothing to do with him. Thinking like 200-something pick, now he's like a 100-something pick. Rosarino's like a 30-something pick or a 40-something pick. Now he's actually kind of fallen down a little bit of late because pitching's gotten pushed up and everything. But he was going so high, like ridiculously high. And I didn't want anything to do with it. But then roster construction, if you take pitchers early and you're in the back end of a 15, like we talked about earlier with Devers and JTR, Rosarino is there, and he's one of your last kind of power speed guys for quite a while that you feel comfortable about. So I've been snagging him up left and right. I think I have him in almost like 40% of my leagues now. So for not wanting to take anything for a while, that changed real quick. And I even the draft I'm in right now, he was my 4th round pick. So I've been starting to snipe him up everywhere, and I'm hoping that he is the real deal. But I have a lot more than I ever thought I'd have of Randy Rosarino.
Yeah, no, it is really interesting how that happens. And what's nice is you can also fall back on the projections with the Rosarino as well. You're like, the projections love him. The projections love him, but it's true. I mean, roster construction, like he's the last stolen base guy there. You know.
Yep, for quite a while. At least stolen base guy that helps in other categories.
Totally.
It's like the last one for a while, at least in the outfield. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. We're not talking Stephen Brault. We talked about that already.
Starting pitchers. He's on my list, Bubba. He's on my list. Stephen Brault.
Well, I have him in over half of my leagues. So what do you say?
Oh God. Well, I have Stephen Brault in 12 of my 15 leagues.
Yeah.
And now he's injured. And I also have Eric Lauer on 12 of my 15 leagues. And he's in AAA, people. No. Oh, God. If anybody tells you to trust anything I say ever, just Eric Lauer the last couple of years.
Yeah, but what round did you get those guys in?
My God. I know, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I have so much exposure to them. It's just a wasted lineup spot. So for me, Brubacher is a guy that I have a lot of, going towards the back end of drafts. Like him a lot, put the skills together second half of last season. He's one of those guys where at the end of the previous season, he's the guy that everybody wants on the waiver wire. I know he had a 2-start, I think that last week of the year where he was supposed to. I think he ended up having it, and he had 2 pretty good starts there. But just like a guy who starts to show that higher level of skill, and so you bank on him. So he's a guy, it's nice, at least in the draft champions it was, because you kind of feel like he's going to get innings. He's going to be in that rotation. He's kind of a solid thing. So I have a lot of him, and I like him. I like the upside, and I like the floor relative to where he's going in drafts. I think he's going to be really good. Well, I don't know if this guy really counts. Jose Urena. I have a lot of Urena after the Tigers signed him. I've always been a little bit of
you have been an Urena guy. I remember that.
I have been a Urena guy, which I'm not sure. I don't know how I feel about that. I'd rather be the JT Realmuto guy than the Jose Urena guy. But Urena throws hard. The velo is good. He's going to the Tigers team. He's in the rotation. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Just a guy to get innings. The one guy who's maybe most relevant now, I do like Jeff Hoffman. I have a lot of Jeff Hoffman shares. And it looks like he's going to be the 5th starter in that Reds rotation based on some tweets that I saw earlier today. He pitched well. He gave up 3 runs in the first, and then he had 4 scoreless without giving up another hit. I have him on more than 50% of my draft and hold teams. So I just think what I saw in him was a guy moving from Colorado. He already had the velocity. He already had the fastball spin, and he already had 2 secondaries that were pretty good pitches. And so getting out of the Coors would benefit him. And then maybe their player development staff would be able to help him get to that next level. It's been off and on during spring, but he's done well enough, I think, to earn a spot. And so he's a guy that I like a lot as well. The ace that I have the most of this year. Do you want to guess?
The ace you have the most of, because can you at least tell me where you've drafted more often? Beginning, middle, or back? That's kind of
backish
cheating,
middle. Backish middle.
Okay, so the most you have, I'm gonna go with Aaron Nola.
Nope.
You Darvish.
Nope.
Okay, then Giolito it is.
Giolito it is. 7 shares of Lucas Giolito I have. And like you mentioned, that was a product, I got like the 13th to 15th pick in like 5 straight drafts.
Yep, he falls to you perfectly right there.
Yeah, it's just a Giolito feast over there.
Yep.
I have him. I have 7 shares of Giolito. 6 shares of John Means. 7 of Ryan Yarborough.
Nice.
I'm looking for the aces though now.
You probably spread out the rest.
Bieber, I have 4.
Okay.
Felt like I had a lot of Bieber. DeGrom, I have 3. Cole, I have 3. And I think and Darvish, I have 3. And I think the Cole DeGrom thing, obviously I love Cole DeGrom, is just where I've been drafting this draft season. You got to be in the top part of it. I remember my first draft, I had the 8th pick, and I got DeGrom at 8.
That's criminal.
God, I peaked early this draft season. So, yeah.
I peaked early. That's good. Brault, I have way too much of. Like on my sheet here is 8 of my 11 drafts, not counting my 9 best balls. I know he's at least half of those. So a lot of Stephen Brault. which is scary. I actually have a lot of Pittsburgh Pirates, Brault, Keller, and Brubacher on over half of all like my 20 teams. I have a lot of them. So picking good pitching on bad teams. Gotta love it. But if you want to start at the bottom here, Josh Lindblom, I have on well over half my rosters. Huge fan of him. The recent news today is kind of concerning that Peralta looks to have the upper hand in the rotation and Lindblom's the odd man out. But at the same time, in that article, Craig Counsell says, expect Lindblom and Peralta to both be starting by mid-April, basically. So it might be a scheduling thing or Brett Anderson's out of the way. I don't know. But I still think Lindblom would be fine because the Brewers have said it's 100 more innings than last year. So what's Peralta going to go, 150-ish? Lindblom about 160-ish? Like, these guys are only going to go so far that they have to mix and match, and I guess that's the way they're going to do it. So he'll still be fine. Lots of him. Mentioned Mitch Keller, Brubacher, Marcus Stroman. I have a ton of. I'm a big believer in what he's doing. His new split change is filthy. He's actually striking guys out like he did when he got traded to the Mets. The strikeout rate went up. It's translating still again this spring. Love Marcus Stroman this year. Mike Minor I have quite a bit of for a season when you're looking for innings pitched. Minor is an innings pitched machine, and I like him in that ballpark there in Kansas City. You could probably go for a few more guys, but if we want to talk aces, it's Giolito as well. Lots of Giolito.
Wow, we're like the Lucas Giolito fan club.
Yes, we are. Big fan club here. Big fan club. Well over half my leagues have Giolito. A lot of it's plus I've been drafting in the back of drafts, like you said. So he falls right to you there, and it's hard to say no. He's my fourth starting pitcher in my rankings. I almost want to put him over Bieber. I really do. Like, it's really close because I think he's that good. But Gio got a lot of shares of Gio, a lot of shares of Nola. I've been doing a lot of that pairing, Gio Nola of late. That's been fun. I don't think I have any Darvish, which is kind of weird because I like Darvish a lot. Very little DeGrom and Cole because I just haven't been drafting at the front, which just hasn't happened. And then an okay amount of Castillo, but it's mainly Gio and Nola. If we're talking aces, those are my main guys. And when Gio wins the AL Cy Young, we're going to be very happy people, Toby.
It's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be outstanding. It's going to be great.
Although, I don't know. You're going to win the overall. Now that I have Cole in a main, I want Cole.
He can be runner-up. They could have a great race, both throw 200-something innings.
For sure.
It's going to be outstanding. Relief pitching. Now, this is going to be fun because it's either you go early on a guy or you're spread out with a bunch of late darts, especially in DCs and stuff. So what do you have for relief pitching?
Yeah, relief pitching isn't going to be a ton of fun. One guy I have a bunch of is Chris Martin of the Braves. He's probably I think he's one of my most owned, like at least useful relievers for this part in the draft. He just, I think he'll probably get some saves. He doesn't walk guys. He strikes guys out. I think he's a really good pitcher just generally. So I don't mind having him on my team because of that. But then he also maybe provides access to saves, although Will Smith has looked great as well. So that's one of them. My most owned reliever, I don't know whether he'll factor in at all this year, is Phil Maton of Cleveland. Kind of flew under the radar a little bit. I mean, maybe it's just because of role, but he was absolutely fantastic last year. I mean, swinging strike rate, I think, was over 17%. Just really dominant, really nice whip, didn't walk guys. He gave up, I think he had a really high BABIP or a really high home run to fly ball rate. So his ERA was a little bit higher than it should have been in a small sample, but he was absolutely fantastic. So, that he was kind of my most owned, but Chris Martin, Pierce Johnson was another one who doesn't look like he's going to get access to much of anything. I also have a lot of Neris, and I actually lucked out because I have a bunch of Anthony Bass, but I think like 6 of those shares are pre-signing with the Marlins.
He was super free in drafts back then.
Yeah, I know. That was kind of wonderful. Just because he's I call him like an Alex Colomé because he's fine, right? Like he's like not special, but he's never really been bad. So he's like, if he just does what he's done all the time, then he probably sticks there. And at least that's I think what I was thinking. I can't even remember if I knew if he was going to be on the Blue Jays or not when I was drafting him back then, whether he was a free agent or not. So those are kind of the guys. Neris I had a bunch of before Archie Bradley signed. Yeah. So not super helpful. But those are kind of the guys that I'm most heavily invested in.
Yeah, for me, lots of Tanner Scott, which I had even before the injury to Harvey. So lots of Tanner Scott. Big fan of that. Greg Holland, a ton of, because I figure he'll get saves until he gets traded. So that's interesting. Even though now the Barlow hype's kind of picking up, so something to keep in mind there. But a lot of Holland, a lot of Craig Kimbrell, which going to be good or bad. We'll wait and see there. And then tons of Chris Martin, like you have, and my main guy. I've talked about on the show many times. Oh, lots of Jolie Rodriguez. I was taking a ton of because I never believed in Leclerc to begin with, but we'll see. Jolie's got an ankle injury, so we'll wait and see on that one. But or Ian Kennedy or Matt Bush or someone does something. But my main guy, because I always said that I wanted one of like the top 5 or 6 guys, and then I could piece it together after that. I have a lot of Raisel Iglesias, a lot. So that's a guy I'm going to battle with. So the Angels need to win 100 games this year. That'll be great. And we're going to be in business, because I heard on the recent Launch Angle podcast that Jeff Zimmerman said with the crazy landscape of saves, just to be competitive in saves, not to win it, maybe not even for the top 70% or 80% or whatever, you only need like 60 saves, which when you start thinking about it, kind of makes sense. In the long, like if there's only 6 or 7 lockdown closers, then it's tough to get unless you get a couple of those guys. 60 saves could at least keep you competitive, I guess. I'll get your thoughts on that if you want, but if that's the case, give me Iglesias and then piece it together, and I'll be quite happy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, 73 was 80th percentile in 2019. And so you assume that that's probably going to go down maybe even a little bit this year with the save landscape. So that makes a ton of sense. Guess who I have 5 shares of?
This is going to be a good one, I can tell.
You just mentioned him.
Oh, is it Craig Kimbrell?
No.
Greg Holland?
Worse.
Oh, Leclerc. Yeah, I know. You're a big Leclerc guy. I know. I feel bad.
Big Leclerc guy. Famous last words. Yeah. Famous last words. Big Leclerc guy here.
But you're also a big Giolito guy, so it's okay.
Leclerc, Brault, and Urania. You came to the show for that reason. That type of guidance. So, man. But I did get Jolie Rodriguez in a few spots. I don't know if it's going to be him or not. You know, I think Ian Kennedy or Matt Bush seems like the most likely at this point. But
I know I grabbed the Matt Bush in my last draft. I grabbed Ian Kennedy in a couple drafts before that, just late round. Let's see what happens. Smart. I started to do the philosophy, and I think I talked about it on our last show, is when Jeff Erickson did his beat Jeff Erickson's 12-teamer, so it's different than 15. But like in a 12-teamer with as much volatility at closing, like with your last like 4 picks, just take guys that might have a chance, and if not, you drop them the first week and use it as like part of your churn and burn, which makes a ton of sense. I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, because you're going to be moving those pieces so many times anyways. Why not see what happens in the last couple of weeks? So I started grabbing like the Bushes, the Kennedys, just like, let's throw them here, see what the decision is. We drop a guy or we don't.
Like, no, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, because I asked him about it, and we started talking, which is fun on Twitter. We got civil conversations, people. And all of a sudden, I was like, okay, that makes actually a ton of sense when you say it that way. So something to think about if you guys are doing late drafts, kind of mix and match and see what happens. Instead of taking that like 7th outfielder, go try a reliever and see what happens. Just stuff like that. All right. Let's do some listener questions here. SMMS79 jumped in the chat over here. He didn't drop us a question on Twitter. He said he's sorry. He's late.
Liverpool fan.
Yep. Oh, there you go. So your boy. So this is not Comac, dude. This is SMMS79. He says he always has an initial question for us, which he does. In his home keeper league, I have an extra 2nd-round pick, 14 overall, to pair with my 9 and 12 picks. So I'm guessing he has 9, 12, and 14. That's what it sounds like. Do I go for Glory, Mondesi, or add a solid baseline starting pitcher or hitter type? Well, it depends on who you're keeping.
I know. Come on.
Hit us up, SMMS. We need to know who you're keeping. We need the
context. We don't even know. Is it 5x5? Is it 6x6? What are the categories here? How can we answer this? How can we answer this? Put the details in the comments,
and we'll get back to you.
We're gonna get back to it.
Yeah. All right. Alfonso Dietrich, he asks, rounds 3 through 5 seem very weird to me. I hate all the picks I'm making in these rounds. This comes back to the Devers and the JTR stuff. But this is for a 12 team, by the way. How have you guys targeted these rounds? What type of players are you looking for? In a 12 team for me personally, I'm looking for give me steals and some power, lots of steals right here. But it's 12 teams. There's a lot more to deal with than 15, obviously. I'm rarely looking for pitching at this point in a 12 team in rounds 3 through 5. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, in rounds 3 through 5, it depends what I did in the first 2 rounds, obviously. But, I think speed and batting average. I think speed and batting average combos are done pretty much in the 3rd round of a 15-teamer. In a 12-teamer, they go a little bit deeper. So, they go through the 4th round, I think. And then 4 and 5, it really just depends on who the earlier guys are that you took. One should always build off the other. But generally, I think there are some pretty good hitters available. I think there are some pretty good pitchers available as well. So it really depends on where I am in that round and who I'm targeting there.
All right, SMS 79 is back. He's keeping Snell, Woodruff, and I'm guessing it's Jordan Alvarez. Head-to-head 5x5 with OBP and quality starts instead of wins and average. Okay, like it. Tons of hitters have been kept. It's only a 10-teamer. That's good to know, too. Thinking of trying to dominate pitching, hoping to get a Harper or Freeman at 9, then starting pitching. Yeah, I like that idea. If with what he's saying, if it's legit, there's that much bats gone, and you can get Harper or Freeman at 9 still with all the keepers, and then you can go pitcher at 12 and 14, I like it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't get Mondesi. If it's an OBP league, especially a 5x5 and it's OBP, do not get Mondesi.
And with quality starts being so tricky.
It is head-to-head, though.
Yeah, but head-to-head, that's I wouldn't worry about it. Well, because he could just win you stolen bases every week.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it because he's not. Yeah, but he's also not consistent. So there's up and down. I don't play head-to-head, so don't listen to anything I say.
Part of me, like with quality starts being so challenging, I would go get those ace pitchers right there. Like get those guys that are more often than not throwing 6+ innings because that drops off very quick.
Yeah, I definitely add at least one top-notch starting pitcher right there. If you can get Harper at 9, I mean, Harper is legitimately like a top 10 in OBP overall pick,
he's a
not
monster.
even including keepers. So
how's
you
he
can
not
get Harper,
kept?
definitely get him.
How's he not kept in this format?
Yeah, and I mean, I would say try to get another stolen base guy there that's not Mondesi. And I know what your valuations on your spreadsheet say, but one thing about valuations is that tells you what his value is, but then you think about, okay, how does that impact the picks that I take later on in this draft because I have to compensate for this massive OBP strain, So that's what I would say right there. I'd say grab one more top end pitcher for those quality starts. That'll give you 3 pretty decent ones. One that I'm a little iffy on in Snell, and then grab two good hitters. That would be what I would suggest.
I like that quite a bit. And he also mentions keeper rules. First year Trout's available. So this sounds like it's probably year 4-ish, 5 of this league. So now all the big guys that got taken earlier are starting to become available again, which is fun. It's fun. Yeah. So I dig it. Just real quick, we don't have to go deep because you said it many times. But B Krogman 33 asks, he's in the chat, says, I love you, Toby. But did you change your stance on Vlad? I'm praying the launch angle increases. You've talked about this many times, but give Krogman your cliff notes on this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I have to see what he's doing in spring training, but it's such a small sample that we have, and we have such a long historical sample. I mean, even with Vlad, if Vlad were to get his ground ball rate to 45%, which is still worse than league average, that would be like one of the biggest decrease in ground ball rate from year to year in a long time. Ketel Marte, I think, was 9%, and that was just absolutely massive. So let me even see. I'm just going to see if so Vlad Guerrero Jr., I don't want to give feedback to you. So I'm going to go to the expanded. So let's see. Vlad Guerrero Jr., so his ground out to air out ratio right now, which is very good for him, is 0.83. 0.83. So essentially for every so like essentially like almost 1-to-1 ground ball to fly ball, right? So if that's the case, right, that's about a I want to say like a 40%. I don't know. I can't figure it out. Whatever. Like 0.8 would be, like 40%, I think. So like 40% ground ball rate or something like that. But we're talking about 3 plate appearances, guys. We're talking about 3 plate appearances. He has a 522 BABIP. All right. He's got an 18% walk rate. He's got a 6% strikeout rate. You know, like these are all great things, but like we're talking about 33 plate appearances that he's had so far. And so we can't really take anything substantive out of that. And so there's a lot of reasons to be really excited about Vlad, like the weight loss and that freeing him up and making him faster and making him hit the ball in the air more, making him more flexible, making him tap into that power. That's all really good things, you know, and I think there's two different ways to think about it, right? For me, I'm like, I don't see the upside as being that high because I don't see the stolen bases from him. And I think the batting average will be hard to get to with his existing profile. But at the same time, and I think Vlad Sedler, who likes Vlad, had this tweet, like, you know, you can't say I'm not going to pay for it unless it's happened, because if it's happened, right, he's going to be going way higher up.
Yep.
But for me, that profile, I am not going to pay for until I see it happen. Because if he does not take a serious leap forward, then it's just another guy. He's just another guy with a prospect pedigree and a really nice name that doesn't contribute that much to my fantasy baseball team. So
I'm looking forward to him.
That's my approach. I'm sticking to it.
I'm looking forward to him producing one of these days. It's going to be one of these days because Toby's going to be against it forever until he does, pretty much. So
I adapt every year. Yeah, every year is different.
This is not me rooting against Toby, but for like the fun of baseball, I'm hoping it happens sooner than later because he's so much fun for baseball. But I agree with what Toby says. That's why it's tough to be like, okay, Toby's definitely not wrong because everything he's pointing out makes sense. But man, it'd be so much fun if like him, you have Tatis, you have all these guys it'd be so cool. But we'll see. James DeVerglio in the chat here. He asks, first dynasty draft tomorrow with 15 minor spots. Can you give me one minor leaguer I should snag? Well, there's a ton of them. Since it's your first draft. Like Wander Franco's popular. Rodriguez is popular. Kalenic will be up this year. It depends on how far you want to go. For me, and Toby's a very good dynasty player, as you'd expect, but I try to. I'll still have some pitching prospects, but I prefer hitting prospects at all times because pitching prospects get hurt way more often than hitting prospects. So that'd be my 2 cents. But I also try to win now, so I'm not forcing my prospect picks early like some guys will. So if you want, like someone asked me earlier on Twitter today, like, hey, when would you take your first prospect? And I said, well, if you want to like sprinkle them in throughout your draft, like round 6 or 7 is fine with me. Like get a good base and go. But you'll see some guys in drafts, they go boom, boom, boom. So what would you say for him?
I'll just say more of an approach thing, because I think you mentioned all the really good ones. There's a lot of really good ones. And it also depends on the format, right? A lot of dynasty leagues are OBP as opposed to
average.
So you got to know those types of things and know that those details about the players that you're drafting really get in there. So I would say that. I mean, you know, you've heard all the like big ones, so those are the big ones. For me, what I would say in my approach is I totally agree with Bubba. Heavy into the hitting prospects. Go way more hitting prospects and only get pitching prospects that are close to the majors. That would be my approach.
Yep.
And number 2, my process for looking for guys in the minor leagues. Essentially what I do is on Fangraphs, I'll search through their minor league leaderboard. And then what I will do is I'll go to WRC Plus and I'll look for guys that have high WRC pluses and are young for their age in that league. And that's literally like that. And I'm in an OBP dynasty, so I look at walks and, I look at walks. So I look at the whole package, but high WRC plus, lower age, that I think is a way that you can identify some guys who are in the lower minors who may be popping a little bit. And my approach always, because I want to be competing, is I have a lot of different, I get a lot of really young prospects. And then as they kind of bubble up and they do well and they get close to like the top 100, then I trade them for guys that can help me now.
That's fine.
So Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was say that's the way you should do it, though, because the win now approach just needs to keep getting preached. It makes too much sense, but it just you play in these leagues like I do, and so many guys are just constantly shuffling through their prospects. I'm like, when do you plan on winning? Like, are you just going to keep donating money to win? So, like, that's why I think people hate me. And I took over a rebuild for a team like 3 years ago, so I did a lot of trading early to kind of start my rebuild. But I'm getting closer to competing. Like, I think I'll be close this year, if not one more year. And so guys are trying to trade, like, get my Andrew Vaughns and stuff from me. I'm like, no. Like, this is what I was building for. I'm not starting over just because you think no. So, like, there's so many factors to dynasty leagues and stuff. But, yeah, Toby hit on a lot of them. Don't get a lot of pitching prospects. Just don't do it. It doesn't end as well as you think. Like, if anything, if your hitting prospects are really good and you need pitching to contend, you can trade them for good pitchers that are actually in the major leagues. So think about that as well. So, all right. Another question from Twitter. We have my stuff closed. Here we go. Joseph Morrow asks, how do you rank Giolito versus Darvish, and what is the separation and or difference? Well, we're Team Giolito here. Just throwing it out there if you were curious, but what do you say?
We are. It's super close, though.
Yeah,
it's
it is.
Super close for me. So I think they're both terrific from a skills perspective, I think. I mean, swinging strike rate, swing, Darvish is better. Z contact, nobody's better than Giolito for Z contact. They're just absolutely dominant in every capacity. And so I think either one of them is a great pick. I'm happy taking them in the first round. I'm happy taking them high up in the first round for either one of them. Darvish has the better control. He has recently. I mean, he used to struggle a little bit with it, but in the last couple of years since he's developed, I think it's the cutter, he's really just taken off, and he's got the velocity too. I mean, he's got probably 2 ticks on Giolito in terms of velocity. So he's got everything he has. The reason that I like Giolito more, number one, is just context and environment. I like the fact he's on the White Sox, right? A really good team that I think is far superior to the other teams in their division right now. And I don't think that I think it's not going to be as bad as it was last year, but I still think, like, when you look at there's not really a team in that division that he goes up against that I worry that much about. Even the Twins. I mean, the Twins last year were a middle of the road offense, right? They were not the Bomba squad from 2 years ago. They were middle of the road offense. And I anticipate that they're going to be something similar this year because there's just a lot of question marks, I think, for me, in some of the players that they have there. So their whole division, the guys that he's most likely to pitch against are not that good. And then I think another thing that's key for me is just the injury and age. Obviously, Giolito has been injured in the past, but it's been a couple years now since he's been injured. Obviously Darvish has an injury history, but again, it's been a couple years since he was injured. But he is older, right? He's 36, 34.
Something like that.
Something
he's
like
34 or 35, yeah.
Yeah. I'll just double check. But he's just older. And then I think for San Diego, it's just a little bit of a tougher context. Like, the hitting's obviously really good. But I just the NL West is not the best division, I think. So when you look at like projections like Darvish more, and I can definitely see that. But for me, I just like Giolito just that slightest bit more. But again, totally happy. Like, if I'm drafting in a draft and I'm towards like the middle to back round of the first round, and somebody Cole, DeGrom, those guys are gone, Bieber's gone, and Giolito goes, I'm totally happy. The pick before me, I'm totally happy to take you Darvish there. So they're really, pick a side. I think they're very close, but I just lean Giolito just that slight little bit because of the context and age factor for me.
Yeah, the context is big where he's playing division, all that. I like a lot. The age is the biggest factor for me. It's just Darvish, I love him. I'm not the guy saying he's injury prone, but he's getting older. Like, it's just the way things work. So I'm going to go Giolito on this one. Anything can happen, but I'm as we've said earlier, big on Giolito this year. So let's hope that actually happens. Matthew Cry asks, 10-team AL only, 4 keepers, 3 minors. When is too soon to clog up your util spot?
It's a 10-team.
Yeah.
10-team. What is
AL only, 4 keepers, 3 minors.
I don't really play AL only that much, but I think I wouldn't be. I don't know.
It's tough.
I got to think about this strategically. I think that in an AL only, like having the better player to me would take precedent over position in that context, just because the player pool is so shallow and small differences can mean a lot in the context of an overall season. So I wouldn't be too concerned with the position. I would take probably the best player available more often than not.
Yeah.
That would be kind of my approach. But again, I don't play a lot of AL only leagues, and so I'm probably not the best one to ask about that specifically.
Yeah, I don't play a lot of onlys too, but just kind of you think about like a larger league, a 15-team league would be like a 10-team AL only. Not quite the same, but depth-wise would be similar. Yeah, I could see not carrying it. Like I want to just fill my roster up. It's like the old thing we talk about in 15-team leagues. When's it too soon to take Nelson Cruz or one of these guys? Like I don't want to. Nelson's that good. You take Nelson Cruz. Like it's just the way it goes. Flexibility is awesome. Like you want flexibility, but I don't worry about it too much unless it's gonna really screw me up. But it shouldn't. If he's that good to take him that early, like a Jordan Alvarez is probably what you're asking about, or it's only just Jordan, JD, Cruz. Heck, half the league. Yeah, Miggy. Half the league could have a util only guy. So I wouldn't worry about it personally. But that's because if you think about util only, the American League is with the DH. That's a lot of util only options. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, really. But,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. One thing that I think people who have like different leagues like this should definitely use is, I don't know how much people use the auction calculator on Fangraphs.
It's huge.
But it's so
you can customize out of it too. Like it's amazing.
Yeah. I always do that for all my OBP leagues. That's what I always run the valuations through to get them, because it's a little complicated on the spreadsheet that I use. And I'm too lazy. So I just like run them through the auction calculator, and it just gives you a really good sense for value. And obviously you don't have to follow them to a T, but it gives you a sense of, if this guy is util only, what's the penalty,
Yep.
For that. And like, where does he fit? How much better is he than the other players that are available at that time? So definitely highly recommend using that for anybody who has like non-traditional leagues.
Yep. I think it's a great call. Last question we have tonight. Big Friendly Giant asks, last year it seemed like every minor leaguer in baseball is getting called up. Does this change how you look at roster construction in 2021? Potential impacts, quicker learning curves for when they get called up again. Pitchers got proportionally more rest last year, more potential roster turnover, so on and so forth. I personally think, like we've already seen with Kirilloff and other guys go down, we're back to full season baseball, folks, and these guys are cheap. So last year was a short season where everyone had a chance to win. They needed bodies a lot too because guys are getting COVID and everything. So it was a little different. This year, there's going to be a minor league. There's going to be things to let these guys develop. You're still going to see a lot of them, but you're going to get like Kirilloff will be up in a month or two. Clinic will be up in a month or so. Like it's not going to be right out the gate anymore for me, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be different this year with the minor leagues there. And last year was just so bizarre because normally you'd be able to track and be like, oh, this guy's surging or this guy's not doing well, and have a sense of who might be the next one to take that step up. And we didn't have that, and we didn't have that available. And we didn't know exactly what the justifications were for bringing up some guys and not others, because you have guys that were brought up last year who are now getting set to like AA or like high A, you're just like, okay. So I think last year was a pretty unique circumstance. And now that there's more of a developmental infrastructure in place with the minor leagues back and stuff like that, at least in a very different form, that I think you'll see a lot less of them messing with guys' developmental paths like that. And so I think it was kind of a unicorn of a season, but we'll see. It's a really good question and I think a really good way to think about things too, because it teaches us not to necessarily write off guys, who are in the lower minors, and some of them went from the lower minors and were very successful, so it can definitely happen.
Yeah, and we'll get some guys. Don't get me wrong. It's just not going to be like last year was crazy. Everything about last year was crazy. So just expect that to not be the same, basically. As much as we want these young guys, just remember these guys are cheap. That's the best way I can say it. They're not going to give away free money now. So, all right, Toby, that'll wrap us up for the week. One more episode to go before the regular season begins. We'll do bold predictions next week. Maybe some more listener questions. Probably talk about our drafts that I think will be done pretty close to then. Any final thoughts as we head into the last big weekend of drafts?
No, good luck to everybody. I hope everybody's having fun. This is what we do all the research for in the off season and all the podcasts and everything. So it should be a lot of fun. And I think that should be great. I'm really looking forward to the season starting. I mean, that's as much as I love draft season, I love the in-season stuff. I love the grind. That's when it starts. You know, the draft is in today's game, the draft becomes less and less important. I mean, it's still very important, but it's less and less important because you have so many dynamics and so much shifting and, you know, wondering about innings counts and everything like that. So it'll be really fun the next week or two and then, you know, like a week from Thursday, we'll have baseball.
Yeah, we have one of Toby's favorite. Tell Toby's wife that it was cool having the off season because Fab starts this weekend. So we're going to lose Toby for Saturday and the Sunday mornings. That's going to begin.
It starts this weekend.
Yeah, the 28th, this Sunday, first Fab period starts. So that'll be fun.
Already started working on it.
I figured you did.
Started working.
Vlad Sedler posted a picture of one of his leagues, and I'm like, you could legit build a team from the Fab.
Dude, the 12 teamers are just nuts. I get in there and I'm like, who's available? Like, what happened in this one? And those are older ones from Vlad. Like mine are from 3 weeks ago, and I'm like a million.
It's crazy.
Is on the wire.
So we'll probably recap the first Fab period also next week. Kind of get a little chatter on that.
That could be fun. Actually, that would be really
some
fun.
Of the names some of those names and how much they go for could be quite entertaining to talk about. So just
hope you're not in Eric Heberlig's league.
Oh, God,
I think that's his first name, right?
Yeah, that's his first name. Yeah, that's the legend himself. But all right, everybody, you can find Toby on Twitter at BatFlip Crazy. I'm at BDentric. Thanks for listening. As always, give a rate and review to the BatFlip Crazy podcast, or the Bench with Bubba podcast, and we will catch you guys next week. This is episode 76. Catch y'all later.